8. Stay strapped. All of a sudden I feel a pop and fall to the ground. Henry Pookie Loke Clark. Big Meech was done with Atlanta. Back in October of 2005, after he'd given a fake name at a roadblock outside the strip club Pinups, he was warned by local cops to stay out of DeKalb County. A month later, and one county over, authorities raided the Buckhead house where they believed Meech lived on Perrin Place. Meech was in Miami by the time the search warrant was executed on Space Mountain, a search that, to him, seemed way out of line. At that point, he decided he'd had enough. There were certain rules to the game, even on the other side of the law, and the Space Mountain raid seemed to him to be a signal that authorities in Georgia weren't playing fair. No investigator ever saw him at that house. There was nothing on paper that tied him to it. Basically, he told himself, they were just operating on the assumption that he lived there. Meech believed the Space Mountain search warrant was filled with such assumptions. To him, the investigator who drafted the warrant crossed the line when he quoted an article from hip-hop magazine, The Source. In the article, Meech stated that his crew didn't rob, steal, or kill for their money. The investigator took that to be an admission of sorts. Although Flannery denied killing people for money, the investigator wrote in the warrant, he did not claim that they did not commit murder. If they wanted him so bad, Meech wondered, why didn't they just keep him in jail after the roadblock arrest at Pinups? Why not save themselves the trouble of trying to shadow his every move? Oh yeah, he told himself, they don't have shit. In Atlanta, Meech felt he'd never be able to live down the hype. The chaos killings had seen to that. It was as if once he stepped into the club parking lot, that night in 2003, he'd crossed into an inverted reality. The deaths of Wolf and Riz followed him everywhere. He'd never be the guy he was just 5 minutes before. He'd been branded a murderer, and the scar was permanent. Never mind that he'd been shot that night too, shot from behind, literally in the behind. Never mind that no indictment was ever filed. From that point on, everywhere he went in the city, Meech was the guy who killed Wolf, despite the fact that he swears he wasn't. Even the billboards, which were an attempt, however indiscreet, to restore his reputation, had been misconstrued. He put them up to make a point. I'm a businessman with a legitimate product to promote. I'm not going to back down. They were intended as damage control. After all, what killer would put his face on a billboard? For that matter, what drug dealer would advertise his merchandise in such a place? BMF Entertainment was a record label, pure and simple, and that's what the billboards were trying to say. Never mind, though. He'd say it in Miami. Miami was a friendlier place, a place where the authorities didn't seem so interested in him. And that's where he intended to stay. He'd still have to go back and forth between the cities for business, but for pleasure, Miami would be home. Sheltered in his South Beach mansion and encouraged by the locals to come out and party, Miami was easy. Miami was perfect weather and glitzier clubs and more beautiful women than you could stand around and count. Atlanta, on the other hand, was aggressive roadblocks and after-dark search warrants and his name in the paper for all the wrong reasons. In Miami, Meech would deliver his message not through the use of billboards, but with another documentary-style video, a follow-up to the 2004 DVD chronicling the making of Blue Da Vinci. Meech invited DVD magazine Smack to come down to Miami and check out BMF Entertainment in action. He hoped that what the film crew captured would resonate throughout the industry, all the way to the big-time record execs who Meech believed would validate him. Meech made the video exclusively for them, to get their attention and ideally some of the money they're known to invest in smaller up-and-coming labels. The docu-video was split into 4 chapters, each named for one of BMF Entertainment's top players, Meech, J-Bo, Ill, and Blue. Miami couldn't have been a more perfect setting. The Ill chapter showed all 4 men milling around a reception in an all-white, lofty space in South Beach, dressed identically in black cargo shirts, over black tees with black bandanas tied around their heads, with the exception of J-Bo, whose bald head gleamed unobstructed, and huge sparkling chains hanging from their necks. The 4 of them hobnobbed with some official-looking types. A white-haired man in a dark suit, his skin so flushed that it had assumed a hue not far from that of his ruby-red tie, appeared to be hosting the soiree. The mood in the room was celebratory, if a bit awkward. Ill, who was short, tough and more boyish than other BMF attendees, motioned to the corner and said in a measured and breathless voice, "That's the mayor over there, Miami Mayor Manny Diaz," dressed in jeans and a white linen shirt unbuttoned at the neck, waved in recognition. "We appreciate Miami," Ill said, turning back to the camera. "We appreciate the hospitality." Meech, standing just to Ill's right, smacked the gum he was chewing and grinned. Before Ill could continue what he was saying, the guy in the suit ambled up from behind him and placed both hands on Ill's shoulders. He hovered over him for a second, then leaned in. "Miami appreciates you," the man said, a trace of Kennedy-era Massachusetts in his ambassador's voice, though he stumbled slightly over his words. 30 years ago, it was rhythm and blues, soul, all of that. It was what it was. Motioning to Meech, Ill, J-Bo, and Blue, he continued, "This is what it is. The dichotomy, the community, the people, the culture, the variation. It's a big event with this group here. Unparalleled as far as peace." Meech turned to face the man, stretching his grin even wider until he beamed. The glee of the smile rivaled the sparkle of his trademark diamond cross. He shook the man's hand. "That's what's up," he said, a low, friendly grumble. In the next scene, the J-Bo chapter, a large crew of BMF members, arrived at South Beach strip club Teasers to celebrate J-Bo's birthday. By then, the crew had switched outfits. This time, the four main players, as well as their followers, wore matching white jerseys printed with BMF. "This is one of the greatest men alive right here," Meech said to the camera, arms slung around J-Bo's shoulder as they walked inside the club. "It don't get no better than this." "It can't get no better than this," J-Bo responded. Meech had just set up a 6-month deal with one of South Beach's wildest nightclubs, Crowbar. BMF Entertainment would host a party there every Sunday, and depending on the size of the crowd Meech pulled in, he'd get a decent cut of the money earned at the door. Crowbar boasted 3 VIP areas, including a 3-story glassed-in club within a club. It could accommodate 1,600 people, who often paid upward of $50,000 each. It was legitimate money earned on the street cred, and Meech was ecstatic. On the night of J-Bo's birthday, as with most nights that BMF was out partying in South Beach, the VIP areas of Teasers was BMF's exclusive stomping ground. For much of the night, Meech and J-Bo sat on the highest ledge within the all-red room, and rappers and BMF members pushed through the mass of bodies to pay their respects. "J-Bo!" a voice called out from the crowd. It belonged to the pint-sized tomboyish rapper, Da Brat. "Happy birthday, brother!" Seeing who it was, J-Bo extended an arm to pull her up, as if reaching down from a throne. Moments later, Meech descended from his seat alongside J-Bo to join Blue, who was rapping in sync with one of his songs. It was playing over the club sound system. The VIP crowd bounced and swayed to the track, a sweaty mass to which Meech had arrived fully prepared. In one hand, he gripped a bottle of Cristal, dancing gingerly enough so as to not spill the precious champagne. In the other, he clutched a bottle of water and a hand towel, rehydration tools for his intense level of partying. In the DVD's next to last scene, Blue offered the camera crew a tour of the cars parked on the grounds of the South Beach house where the crew was staying. There, in matching silver, were the Lamborghini Gallardo, Rolls-Royce Phantom, and Bentley GT Coupe. Opening the door of the Phantom, Blue spoke in mock British refinement and acted out a drug transaction during which the passenger of the Rolls seeked some high-grade marijuana. "Do you have any gray chronic Poupon blunts?" he giggled. "As a matter of fact, Blue," he said, answering his own question in the same ridiculous voice, "we have some kush." "It'll be a pleasant day, sir." The DVD concluded with a soliloquy from Meech. The sun was setting, and in the breezy Miami dusk, Meech stood, illuminated by a dim spotlight, in the courtyard of the lemon-tinted, Spanish-tiled home. Walled in by 8-foot hedges and a stucco privacy wall, dressed in a crisp, oversized white t-shirt and staring dead on into the camera. Meech spoke with the calm authority of a seasoned prophet, his diamond cross flickering in the cool, bluish light. He spoke plainly, offering an in-depth description of his crew's rare camaraderie. Yet his intended audience wasn't immediately clear. His words didn't have the luster or substance of a business pitch. Rather, he seemed to be delivering an anti-pitch, an assertion of his independence and a testament to his prowess, not as a CEO, but as a mob boss. If Meech hoped to win over a music mogul, one who was willing to boost BMF Entertainment's legitimacy with a distribution deal establishing the company as a major label subsidiary, the mogul would have had to be sold on Meech's street cred alone. "You don't get nothing like this nowhere," Meech told the camera, motioning to the group of men who, one by one, whether by stepping into frame or by the camera zooming out, began to fill the shadows behind him. "Everybody move like brothers, and everybody is from different places. St. Louis, Detroit, Texas, Atlanta, Cali, Florida. We got people from everywhere in our mob. Everybody move as one. Everybody is prospering in some kind of way, in their own way. Every man plays his own role, and everything starts with the leader." The men in the background nodded. "I'm a good leader," Meech continued, his voice rising and falling in gravelly cadence. "So I got good people to follow. It's simple. You can only be like the nigga that's running your crew. If you got a robbing-ass boss, then you're going to be a robbing-ass crew. If you got a real boss who knows how to sacrifice and take bad along with the good and show his crew how to be men, and that's what you get. Everybody's shining like new money." As he continued to speak, his movements become more hypnotic. He stepped forward and back, giving a gentle, steady sway to his broad shoulders. He moved in time to a deep instrumental hip-hop beat, and the motion mimicked a charmer trying to tame a snake. But considering it was a camera, not a cobra, into whose eyes Meech stared, there was a hint of self-consciousness to his words, a trace of him trying to convince the outside world that the hardships that have plagued the other crews won't spread to his. There ain't no other crew like this in the world, and there never will be another one, not black. If niggas like this are shining all together, doing shit every day, and they're gonna fall out over some money or somebody's gonna rob, steal, or kill. I've yet to see that. All of us get along with money. We've had money. Money ain't nothing without us being together, and we can't be stopped. I don't see nobody stopping us. I don't see no one to come after us either, none. Nobody will ever do this again because this many niggas and this much money get along and stay together. They're gonna fall out over girls or for something. From there, he crossed into offensive territory, straying from the style of an old-fashioned sexist preacher into that of a stereotyped hip-hop player. "We don't fall out over no girls," Meech told the camera. "We hit them all. They hit my hoes, I hit they hoes. The ones that don't want to be shared, and that's your own personal one. Other than that, we ain't falling out over no hoes." In summation, Meech assigned a purpose to the partying in excess that fills the preceding 30 minutes of the video. He might have stretched the numbers a tad for effect, but the point was clear. Meech was answering a calling. He felt he had a responsibility to spend as much cash as possible, and he had to do it fast, because you never know when someone might burst in and put an end to all that overkill. A lot of niggas don't like to spend their money. We love to spend money. We can't take none of this shit with us, none. Ain't no armored trucks pulling up at no funerals, so you better enjoy this shit. Just a fool when his money won't part. When we go out at night, whatever we spend, $50,000, $100,000 in the motherfucking club, we can afford to do it because we can't bring it all with us. Simple. At about the time that the Smack DVD dropped, so did Jeezy's street video, Trap or Die. It was packaged along with his album-length mixtape of the same name, which had been for sale in various incarnations for months. Jeezy's DVD, which eclipsed Smack in sales, did far more to boost his career than Meech's would. And though similar to the Smack video, down to a fatalistic mini soliloquy from Jeezy toward the conclusion of his disc, Trap or Die felt more authentic, more like a genuine documentary compared with the BMF Entertainment's stagier antics, which revolved around the label's sole artist, Blue. By the spring of 2005, Trap or Die sold a reported 250,000 copies, and the buzz surrounding Jeezy was bubbling up from the streets and into the mainstream. Daily newspapers and national magazines were building huge momentum for Jeezy's first major label album, Let's Get It, Thug Motivation 101, which was scheduled for release later that year. In the months leading up to the album, Vibe called Jeezy Atlanta's next big thing. He was described by the Montgomery Advertiser as arguably the hottest rapper in the South right now, and the New York Times christened Jeezy's new DVD as charming and lauded his delivery of tightly packed lyrics and an appealing rasp. Jeezy also piggybacked off BMF's Miami Blitzkrieg. He and Blue hosted a party at Club Sobe Live with then Philadelphia 76er Allen Iverson, and he performed at several of Meech's Sunday night events at Crowbar, along with the equal parts raunchy and sultry rapper Trina, known as the Diamond Princess. Even as early as March of 2005, Jeezy was a pretty big draw. His performances were attracting crowds 1,000 people strong, all of them willing to pay $20 a pop. Jeezy also was as skillful a self-promoter as he was a rapper. In interviews, he answered questions with the same eloquence that characterized his lyrics, and his promises, though big, were genuine. "When my album comes out, all the dots will connect," Jeezy told Billboard in March 2005, 4 months before the album was released. "You're gonna feel sad with me. You're gonna go through the struggle with me. You're gonna hang out with me. You're gonna hit the trap with me. You're gonna see the hood through a young man's eyes who has really seen it, really felt it, really touched it, really tasted it." Basically, Jeezy was guaranteeing that he was the real thing. At the end of this Trap or Die DVD, he described with similar authenticity what life had been like for him thus far, a 27-year-old native of the streets who'd seen 50 or 60 friends fall to the game. "I ain't had a good night's sleep in 10 years, 'cause I don't know if my motherfucking door's gonna fly open. You know what I'm saying? I still don't know. I'm just here, my nigga. At the end of the day, I just want to be heard, dawg. However it go, if it go for good or if it go for bad, I was here, and I made it this far." Soon, his words became more chilling than even he could have imagined. A few months earlier, in the fall of 2004, Jeezy had brushed shoulders with a younger, lesser-known rapper at the downtown Atlanta shoe store Walters. Against the backdrop of Walters' rainbow of Adidas and Nikes, Roderick Davis, a.k.a. Gucci Mane, was passing out promo CDs. He offered one to Jeezy, who was iced out with diamonds, and buying what looked to Gucci like 10 or 15 pairs of shoes. Jeezy took the CD and complimented Gucci on his skills. He'd already heard some of the up-and-comers' tracks. Though they came from different territories, Gucci from Atlanta's East Side and Jeezy by way of Macomb, from Boulevard's Old Fourth Ward, the two rappers claimed similar backgrounds. They both professed to have lived the ghetto life, and they both had been effective in channeling their street experiences into more professional ones. The two rappers hit it off, and they agreed that they ought to get together in the studio. Jeezy thought a collaboration between the two of them might work, and Gucci was game. Gucci, who had recently signed with Atlanta-based Big Cat Records, was in the midst of cutting an album, and he hoped that Jeezy would contribute a few verses to one of his singles. Gucci wanted to attach some of Jeezy's star power to one song in particular, a lighthearted track, at least compared with Jeezy's fare, called Icy, which touched on rappers and groupies' fascination with bling. When Gucci and Jeezy met in the studio, Gucci explained what he was going for with Icy, but Jeezy didn't seem all that interested. That kind of stuff wasn't really his style. The concept was too sing-songy, almost cheerful, held up against Jeezy's darker repertoire. Jeezy tried to steer Gucci toward other material, but Gucci kept bringing them back to Icy. At the very least, Gucci wanted to pay the better-known rapper to lay down a couple of rhymes. It would be a coup for the more underexposed artists to have a guy like Jeezy on the track. Then they would move on to something else, something more Jeezy speed. Jeezy complied, rattling off his distinctive brand of poetry. "In my hood, they call me Jeezy the Snowman. I'm iced out, plus I got snow, man." To everyone's surprise, including Gucci's, Icy became an underground hit. In December 2004, it got heavy play on Atlanta's influential urban radio station, V103. Its video later earned a regular rotation spot on BET. And when Gucci or Jeezy, or on occasion, the two of them together, would perform the song live, the crowd would go wild, screaming the chorus. In the winter of 2004, Gucci and Jeezy took the stage together at Macomb's career-making hip-hop club, Money's. Club owner George G. Money Willis, the fatherly benefactor of Macomb's rap scene, remembered Jeezy from years earlier, in the late 90s. Back then, he was still Lil J and hadn't yet left Macomb for Atlanta. Even so, the young man, not yet a rapper, had big aspirations. He and his close friend, Demetrius Kinky B. Ellerby, were pushing a mixtape label they launched called Young Guns Entertainment. Jeezy and Kinky B were so close they considered themselves brothers. They'd met as teenagers at a boot camp for wayward boys, and as soon as they were out, they hit the streets with a singular purpose: succeed in the hip-hop biz. The goal was a common one in Macomb's down-and-out neighborhoods: but Jeezy and Kinky B's combination of street smarts and business sense was not. G-Money had appreciated the young man's hustle. He noticed something in Jeezy, a quality that distinguished him from other young men with similar dreams. To G-Money, Jeezy was a born star. And now, with Jeezy filling his club with hundreds of adoring fans, he watched as his early premonition came true. After Young Guns had dissolved, Kinky B convinced Jeezy that he had the skills to be a great rapper, and Kinky B's hunch paid off in a huge way. He and Jeezy formed Corporate Thugs Entertainment to promote and package Jeezy's talent. And while the label started as an underground mixtape venture, by 2005, it had grown as much in stature as Jeezy's rap career. Like Jeezy himself, his and Kinky B's label forged a deal with Def Jam. A 7-figure infusion of Def Jam funds would allow Corporate Thugs Entertainment, or CTE as everyone called it, to cultivate new talent, perhaps so that Jeezy could do for another rapper what Def Jam had done for him. CTE built a stable of artists, including the rapper Slick Pulla and the group Blood Raw, with the hope of turning them into eventual stars. Jeezy and Kinky B were also on the hunt for new talent, and in the spring of 2005, they set their sights on another act, a rap trio from Macomb called Lokish Lifestyle. No doubt about it, Jeezy and Kinky B had hit it big. Jeezy's stardom as a rapper was all but guaranteed, and CTE possessed both street sensibilities and major label backing. Those two things were a sure recipe for record sales, and, some claimed, bullying rights. In what came to be construed as a case of big label versus little one, Jeezy's camp had approached Gucci's label in the spring of 2005 with an unwelcome proposition. Icy had gotten so hot, Jeezy hot, that Def Jam wanted to acquire the track from Big Cat Records. Problem was, neither Big Cat nor Gucci was interested in selling it. Icy was Gucci's biggest hit to date. He birthed the song, and so he and Big Cat felt it belonged on Gucci's soon-to-drop album, not Jeezy's. In fact, Gucci and Big Cat already were battling the perception that the song belonged to Jeezy. In one newspaper article about Jeezy's rise, Icy was described as his song, along with Gucci Mane. Gucci had been reduced to a parenthetical. And yet, even after negotiations over the rights to Icy broke down, Gucci tried to get Jeezy to appear in the video for the track. Despite a few near concessions, that didn't work out either. By the time it came time to shoot the video, in April 2005, two things were indisputable. The first was that, on the set, Gucci was just as icy as Jeezy had been the day that they met at Walters. The young rapper was decked out in a $50,000 yellow diamond-studded watch, designed by New York's Jacob the Jeweler Arabo, and a 37-carat pendant that spelled "So Icy" and $40,000 worth of diamonds. The other certainty was that by the time that the cameras were rolling, the term icy also applied to the relationship between the once friendly rappers. The tug-of-war over the track had gotten personal, and the personal was about to get public. To make his feelings on the matter abundantly clear, Jeezy released a diss song aimed at Gucci. The practice was common in hip-hop, for reasons ranging from disrespect to attempted murder. Feuding rappers would dishonor the other party in rhyme and would record the ensuing put-down for all the world to consider. The Biggie Tupac imbroglio in the mid-90s was the most significant of all such battles, ending in both rappers' deaths and the loss of two of rap's most talented artists. Back then, diss songs were mostly released on traditional albums, ones that took months at least to drop, elongating the pace of the feud to a frustrating trickle and dampening its ferocity. By the time Jeezy and Gucci found reason to loathe each other, though, the art of dissing had grown more sophisticated. Thanks to the mixtape phenomenon, diss songs could be released to the street within a week. As a result, neither Jeezy's verbal assault of Gucci nor Gucci's razor-tongued response was served cold. Jeezy's track took several well-aimed swipes at Gucci, and it placed a steep bounty on his $40,000 necklace. "If you just happen to snatch that motherfucker off his neck, I'm gonna shoot you the 10 stack, man." As if the $10,000 bounty wasn't obvious enough, the title of the track, "Stay Strapped," doubled as a threat. If Gucci wasn't already carrying a gun, he ought to start. Gucci was quick to fire back, and his track, Round 1, showed he was eager to play this game. In Round 1, Gucci insulted Jeezy's skills. "Jeezy can't make a hit with a Louisville slugger. And in a verse that took balls, if not disregard for self-preservation, to record, Gucci elevated the feud to the next level. Put a dress on, nigga, you Meech's bitch. In May 2005, two members of the rap trio Lokish Lifestyle hopped into the car to make an hour-and-a-half drive from Macomb to Atlanta. They'd been to the city countless times before, to perform in rap tournaments and hit the clubs to catch up with friends. But this trip was different. This time, Henry Pookie Loke Clark III and Shannon Luke Lundy were hoping to meet representatives from Corporate Thugs Entertainment and maybe sign a record deal. The anticipation leading up to this trip was not unlike the thrill of another visit to Atlanta 5 years earlier, back in Lokish Lifestyle's infancy. On that occasion, Luke, Pookie Loke, and Lokish's third member, Carlos Lowdown Rhodes, came to town for a freestyle rap competition at hip-hop club The Atrium. The three of them didn't even have a song ready, just a beat from somewhere, an undeniable chemistry, and a name for their three-man crew. Lokish refers to a way of life on the streets, Loke having its origin in Crips gang lingo. The term Loke is used to refer to a friend, supposedly standing for love of Crips. In Macomb, a lot of people claim the lifestyle, but few actually lived it. For a while, Pookie, Luke, and Lowdown did. They shared a calloused, survival-at-all-costs mentality. And so when the three of them started writing songs together, their material blended seamlessly. In life and in art, they were part of the same song. Back in 2000, when the Macomb trio drove to Atlanta to perform in the rap tournament at the Atrium, they were mostly unrehearsed and had no real repertoire from which to draw, and still, they managed to take home the prize. Lokish Lifestyle spent the next 5 years putting out 2 albums and building their name in the street without the assistance of a label. Without so much as a push from its 3 members, Lokish Lifestyle songs reached up from the ghetto to grab airplay on the radio. The 3 rappers were surprised to hear their songs there. The men never really had a plan for their music. There was no trajectory that they knew to follow. It was just a reputation followed by a succession of shows that drew a decent crowd, mostly to Macomb's hip-hop ground zero, Club Monies. For a long time, their attitude was to just have fun with it. Not that their music was fun. Over the years, Lokish Lifestyle went from glorifying ghetto life to waxing moody and introspective about it. Their delivery was stoical, and their lyrics unapologetic. Lokish Lifestyle's biggest single, Ridin' High, described a young man trying to navigate and rationalize the pull of the streets. You know I ride since I was 5, followed by, don't blame me, nigga, blame the gang. The group had been hustling for 5 years when they heard that young Jeezy, whom they remembered from his Macomb days, might be considering making them an offer. Pookie and Luke were thrilled about the prospect. The 2 of them drove to Atlanta in May 2005 and checked into the Marriott Courtyard downtown. They were ready to sign. Lowdown, however, was holding out. He wasn't exactly opposed to a deal with CTE. He just wasn't convinced that it was the right move. All 3 of them were getting older, at least by street standards. They were nearing 30. Even Pookie, the wildest of the 3, he'd been arrested 20 times in less than a decade on charges ranging from participating in gang activity to possessing a weapon, was slowing down. But Lowdown was by far the most cautious. They'd been so alike at one time, but Lowdown was starting to drift. He'd gone through the jungle, so to speak, hoping he might make it out and come to appreciate what was on the other side. His path diverged from the others. He wasn't sure they wanted the same thing anymore. And so Luke and Pookie had gone to Atlanta without him. On a dead-end Decatur street called Springside Run, 5 men dressed in black piled out of a van and began trudging up one of the driveways. One of them carried brass knuckles. Another had duct tape. A third had a gun. A neighbor glanced up from trimming his edges and thought it odd, a sight so menacing in broad daylight. He watched as the door swung open and men disappeared behind it. There was no knock, nothing. Inside the house, Gucci Mane was hanging out with the woman he'd met earlier that afternoon at Blazing Saddles, a strip club on the southernmost stretch of Atlanta's busy Moreland Avenue, the part where the $300,000 condos and colorful boutiques fade away, replaced by trucker bars, weird strip malls, and industrial yards. Gucci had gone to the club to shop a few songs around. He hoped the strippers would like one of his tracks enough to want to dance to it on stage, a move that would help generate some buzz. One of the dancers, in fact, seemed particularly interested. She even invited Gucci and his friend back to her place, where the listening party could continue. They weren't at her house long before company arrived. One of the men, dressed in black, the one with the brass knuckles, punched Gucci in the head. Another pistol whipped his friend. They said something about killing him. Someone drew a gun. Gucci drew faster. Stay strapped, he'd been warned. He aimed and fired. The 5 men piled out of the front door. As they made their way to the van, one became separated from the others. He ran alongside Springside Run, away from the dead end and toward the busier Columbia Drive. A middle school was up ahead. So was a cop car. He veered into the woods, stumbling, falling. When the neighbor heard the shot and saw the 5 men come rushing out of the house, he dialed 911. While driving to the scene, the responding officer saw the man running, but he proceeded to the house. There wasn't much to find there. Gucci Mane and his friend had already bolted. 3 days later, DeKalb County Police got a call. 4 men had shown up at a Columbia middle school to search for something in the woods. Based on what they discovered, the school security guard called the cops. One of the 4 men was Lokish Lifestyle Shannon Luke Lundy. Another was Demetrius Kinky B. Ellerby, co-owner along with Young Jeezy of Corporate Thugs Entertainment. Luke gave the police their story. He said they'd been at a video shoot across town in Atlanta's West End when he overheard someone talking about a shooting on Springside Run. Luke told the officer that his bandmate, who'd gone missing, happened to know a woman who lived on that street. So he and his buddies came to check out the area. What they discovered was an eerie reflection of lyrics from one of the band's tracks. All of a sudden I feel a pop and fall to the ground, realizing that I'm shot, and real slowly I'm dying. Luke had found Pookie Loke there in the woods. He was dressed in all black, a white Braves cap lying at his side. There was a sound coming from him, a buzzing. It was the flies. They had descended, like a funeral shroud over his body. A week later, Gucci Mane was in New York promoting his album Trap House, which was due out in days. BET had asked him to appear on its hip-hop talk show Rap City, and he was on the set in New York when he heard the news. A warrant had been issued for his arrest. Gucci was wanted in the murder of Henry Pookie Loke Clark. Gucci flew back to Atlanta and, in the presence of his attorney, turned himself into authorities. On May 24, 2005, exactly 2 weeks after his visit to the stripper's house, he was released from jail on a $100,000 bond, the same day the Trap House hit the streets. Judging from the response at local record stores, his arrest was generating greater than expected interest in his record. His single Icy debuted at a solid, though not outstanding, number 24 on Billboard's rap singles charts. But Gucci was not celebrating. He was on a mission to clear his name. As a God-fearing person, I never wanted to see anyone die, Gucci told hip-hop webzine SOHH.com the day he got out of jail. I found myself in a predicament, and even though there was an attack on my life, I truly never intended to hurt anyone. I was just trying to protect myself. His lawyers raised the defense that the assault at the stripper's house was the culmination of a business dispute. One of Gucci's attorneys, Dennis Scheib, told the press shortly after Gucci's arrest that his client had refused to relinquish control of his music to some people. He didn't name names. Jeezy and his camp denied any link to the events. During an interview with allhiphop.com, Jeezy said he'd never even been interested in the rights to Icy. It was our song, but it was always understood that it was for him to blow up. Jeezy told All Hip Hop, and that's how it was supposed to be, and I was cool with that. Jeezy's attorney, Janice Singer, fired back more fiercely. It is offensive and outrageous that Jeezy's name is being used by Gucci Mane's defense team and a CD producer as a strategy to sell CDs and defend against the charges leveled against Gucci Mane, she told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Gucci's label, Big Cat Records, then announced that it was seeking evidence to prove that Gucci was the real victim on Springside Run. The label offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrests of the 4 men who accompanied Pookie Loke during the attack on Gucci. But none of those men was arrested or identified. Neither Jeezy nor anyone else was named as a suspect in the incident, even after DeKalb County authorities turned the case over to the FBI, and even after the charges against Gucci were dropped. After conducting their own investigations, Gucci's 2 attorneys, he fired one to hire the other, continued to claim that a business dispute was to blame, and that in some way, so was the Black Mafia family. "Here's the situation," Shive would later say. "5 guys came in, they were BMF. Gucci's other attorney, Ash Joshi, made a similar claim. Law enforcement was always interested in BMF throughout all this. Law enforcement officials, however, would not confirm those allegations." Looking back at the situation more than a year later, Lowdown did not want to speculate too much. As the third member of Lokish Lifestyle, the one who decided not to go to Atlanta with Pookie and Luke, wasn't sure what to think about what happened on Springside Run, but he wasn't angry or even surprised about Pookie's death. He did have his doubts about BMF's supposed involvement, though. Like anyone close to the streets, Lowdown knew that in the weeks and months following the shooting, BMF was getting so hot, the crew would be easy to blame for just about anything. In the spring and summer of 2005, BMF was about to be on fire. The soaring dining room at Justin's on Peachtree Street, hung with floor-to-ceiling ivory drapes and a massive chandelier, was set on May 22, 2005 for a birthday party, and the guest of honor was the father of the former R&B icon turned Atlanta bad boy, Bobby Brown. The past year had been hard on the fallen star. He'd been jailed several times, first for probation violation, that stemmed from a DUI conviction, then for failure to pay child support to an ex-lover, and finally for accusations that he assaulted his wife of 12 years, super diva Whitney Houston. By the time of his father's birthday party at Justin's, however, Bobby Brown was making a comeback of sorts. It would be a uniquely American resurrection. Brown's sagas, including his tumultuous relationship with his famous wife, had been deemed surreal enough for reality TV. A month after the party, the voyeuristic cable show Being Bobby Brown was set to air on Bravo. Had there been cameras capturing the festivities at Justin's that night, Being Bobby Brown would have been all the more disturbing. On that night, the film crew would have captured footage of a crime scene. Sundays at Justin's drew a celebrity-heavy crowd, thanks in large part to the restaurant's owner, Sean P. Diddy Combs. Performers would pop in and take the stage unannounced, or just soak up the scene. Brooklyn rapper Fabulous, who had appeared in the BMF entertainment video for Blue Da Vinci's Still Here, showed up the night of Brown's event. So did several BMF members who paid regular visits to the restaurant. In fact, 3 years earlier, Meech had hosted his own birthday celebration there. The party was packed, and it was about to get interesting. The Brown family sat down for dinner, after which the pop star took the stage at the far end of the dining room. A few hours after his performance, at around 1:45 a.m., Bobby Brown, his sister, his niece, and 2 nephews pushed through the crowd to one of the restaurant's 2 lounges. As the 2 elder Browns found a seat at the bar, the younger ones mingled, and a guy in the crowd, handsome, slim, and muscular, bumped into one of them. "That was disrespectful," Bobby Brown's nephew, Shane Brown, told him. "You need to say excuse me." But the man didn't apologize. Instead, he and Shane got into a shouting match, which escalated into the man pushing Shane in the chest. Shane's cousin, Kelsey Brown, stepped in to try to break up the fight, but he was stopped in his tracks by a frighteningly large friend of the man who pushed Shane. The big guy jumped over a table and struck Kelsey before he could do much to help. The smaller of the men, the one who started the fight, told the cousins, "We kill niggas like you." Bobby Brown's niece, who was standing in the middle of the brawl trying to pull Shane away, started to cry. She called out for her uncle. Bobby Brown stood up on a chair at the bar. "What are you guys doing?" he yelled over the crowd. "It's my nephew." By the time he made it over to Shane, Bobby Brown was too late. The men had fled, and Shane's blood was everywhere. Kelsey was bleeding too, though his injury wasn't so bad. He didn't realize he'd been cut until he saw his blood on his own hands. As the family screamed for an ambulance, Bobby Brown's niece ran outside, following her cousin's attackers. She watched as the 2 men and several others, one of whom she recognized as the rapper Fabulous, jumped into a Cadillac Escalade and made for the parking lot's exit. Fabulous was never a suspect in the attack. She raced over to the valet stand and asked the attendant to jot down the SUV's license plate number. The attendant got most of it, writing it down on the back of a blue valet ticket. By the time she made it back inside, the police had arrived, and Shane was gone. He'd been rushed to the hospital. One of the officers asked her to stay at Justin's and answer some questions, but she said she couldn't. She'd give her statement later. She handed the officer the blue ticket with the license plate number on it and told him she had to go to the hospital immediately. Shane, she feared, was dead. Doctors would later say that the stab wounds to Shane's face, neck, and chest appeared to have been the work of an ice pick. Nerves, muscles, and glands had been severed. An artery had to be repaired. One of the punctures barely missed his jugular. Fortunately, he would live. But the 22-year-old would be seriously disfigured. His injuries were so bad that he'd be incapable of normal facial expressions. The following day, police brought a photo to Shane's hospital room. The picture was of a man named Cleveland Hall, and it came from the Department of Motor Vehicles. Based on the tag number provided by Brown's niece, police were able to pull the title of the Escalade that had fled the scene. It was registered to a 62-year-old man who lived in a suburb just south of the city, and the man's 23-year-old son, who stood 6'7" and weighed nearly 350 pounds, fit the description of one of the two attackers. Glancing at the photo, Shane said the man definitely had been involved. As for the other attacker, the one who started the fight, both Kelsey Brown and a witness who wasn't related to the family told police that he went by a nickname, Baby Blue. The cops were aware of Baby Blue, too. In a police report filed that morning, the incident was described as the case involving Bobby Brown's family and members of BMF. Less than 36 hours after the stabbing, police tracked down and interviewed Cleveland Hall. He told them he'd been at Justin's that night of the attack, and that he saw the fight break out between Bobby Brown's nephew and some other individual. He said he tried to break it up, but after he saw the blood, he backed away toward the exit. He then climbed into his Escalade along with Fabulous, the rapper's manager, and 3 other men, and they bolted. "Do you know any of the people involved in the altercation?" the investigator asked him 2 days after the stabbing. "No," he answered. "Was Fabulous or any of his companions involved in the altercation?" "No," he said. "Nobody in my vehicle was involved." "How do you know Fabulous?" "I used to work in the clubs as security." "Are you involved or affiliated with any type of gang in the city of Atlanta or elsewhere?" "No." The police weren't buying it. Based on the fact that Cleveland Hall drove the Escalade that was identified as the getaway vehicle, and that Shane Brown identified him as one of the attackers, he was arrested shortly after his interview and charged with aggravated assault and party to a crime. The following day, investigators were able to determine the real name of the second suspect. Baby Blue was, in fact, Mark Dixon. They pulled his DMV photo too, which Shane Brown also identified. Shortly thereafter, a warrant was issued for his arrest on charges of aggravated battery and aggravated assault. The same day, Bobby Brown's 22-year-old niece arrived at police headquarters to give her statement. She told the investigator how the fight started. She recounted the "we kill niggas like you" threat. And she described how she followed the 2 men into the parking lot and got the Escalade's tag number from the valet. "Did the altercation start from just a push?" the investigator asked the young woman. "Yes," she answered. "Did you see who stabbed Shane or Kelsey?" "No," she said, but she knew it wasn't Fabulous. "Are you able to identify the person that started the argument if you view the photo?" "Yes." "Some of the individuals that you saw get into the vehicle were the people that started the altercation with Kelsey and Shane?" "Yes." In the ensuing week, as authorities hunted for Baby Blue, local prosecutors believed they had a solid enough case against Cleveland Hall to present the evidence to a grand jury. At that point, the investigation seemed to be on solid ground. On June 3, 2005, the grand jury indicted Hall for aggravated assault in the attack on Shane Brown. Then something strange happened. Despite the fact that Cleveland Hall had been identified by the victim as one of the 2 attackers, despite the fact that evidence firmly suggested he drove the getaway car, despite the fact that the investigation, a month old, was still in its infancy, and despite the fact that a grand jury had just given the charges the green light, the case against Hall came to a screeching halt. 1 week after his indictment was handed up, Hall's charges were shelved at the request of the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. The government offered a succinct explanation of its decision to dead docket the case. In fact, the reason for letting Hall off the hook boiled down to a single sentence: Victims and witnesses in this case have been reluctant to come forward and cooperate with the state in its investigation. Therefore, the state has insufficient evidence to proceed at this time. At one point, Bobby Brown's family had been more than willing to assist in the investigation. Then, all of a sudden, they weren't.